everybody.
Sorry.
Oh, Russ. Hey, everybody. Welcome back.
Welcome back to Home on the RNG.
You know what I've realized is we've done 40-something episodes, and I don't remember the last time I said, this is Jeff.
And this is Russ.
And we're also
Yeah,
joined by
I feel
Chris
like we
Taylor.
really don't say that. We don't even say the name of the podcast.
Well, they've already got the podcast if they're listening, but
I mean, brand recognition.
welcome back to Home on the RNG.
Very good. This is Russ.
And this is Jeff.
Yay.
And I'm Anne Hathaway.
Welcome, Anne. How are you today?
When Home on the RNG started, it was a video series, and each episode opened with tiny little skits that did identify us by
True.
name. We did 31 video episodes, and we never reused any of the little skits, so we had to come up with 31 original ideas for me and 31 original ideas for Russ for like 3-second skits.
What were we doing back then?
We were living our best lives, and then we realized it was a lot of work, and so we turned it into a podcast.
Yeah, it's true.
Living our best lies.
But we are
We were.
not here today to talk about the history of Home on the RNG.
Thank God.
We are here today to talk about Chrono Cross.
Chrono Cross. I'm so excited. I really am excited. This
I
is
know
one of
you
my
are.
top 5 games
It is
of
beautiful.
all time. It's great.
I also love it.
So let's go ahead and dive into personal history.
This came out when I was a senior in high school, and I bought it at a music store for some reason that had video games as well, and books, among other things. But that's where I got it, and I didn't really know anything about it. I knew from seeing like a review in a magazine that it wasn't Chrono Trigger 2, so I didn't have that, looming over my head when I purchased it. And I actually, the first time I played it, didn't love it in the way that I do now, because I didn't totally get it at first. But then on a second playthrough, I really understood and appreciated what it was, and have loved it ever since. It is also part of the reason it's one of my favorite games of all time, is because it is what taught me to appreciate music in video games, period.
Nice. So my personal history, I bought this. Okay, so I'm trying to decide if I want to do the long version or the short version. I'm going to do a slightly long version.
I want the medium version.
Okay, let's do a medium version. Okay, so I bought this game based on the hype that I already had for it in the early internet days. But it's one of the first games I really bought that brand new with my shiny new paycheck at my shiny new job post high school, and I bought it and Final Fantasy IX in the same at the same time.
Nice.
So it was I forget which one is newer. I think 9. So Chrono Cross had kind of been out for a while.
Yeah, Chrono Cross actually came out in 99 in Japan, and 9
Yes.
was in 2000,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
right. And I was working in 2000, so that makes sense. So I bought both those games in the same weekend from Walmart. It was a very good weekend. And yeah, I played Chrono Cross, and I really, really liked it just right out of the gate. I had beaten Chrono Trigger about 7 or 8 times at this point. And, I didn't look at it so much like a sequel to it, because they never really said that it was a sequel. They're kind of like, this is the next Chrono game. And I was kind of used, because of Final Fantasy, to games being like, this isn't really a continuity of the previous thing. It's just its own thing. And so I really liked that it was now more action-y, because I had played Legend of Legaia, so I was kind of used to that whole combo system thing already. I was accidentally kind of ready for this game. And the music.
And Xenogears. Wasn't Xenogears before this?
Yes, but I didn't play it.
Okay. That's the one that I played, was Xenogears.
Yeah, that's my dirty secret, is that I have yet to play Xenogears. I've only seen a little bit, and I've heard some of the music. So yeah, I just motored through this game, and in fact, an early internet guide introduced me to the internet celebrity Jeremy Parrish, whose website at the time, Toasty Frog, I then visited, and from there actually collected a group of friends who were also fans and just fellow video game likers, and from that friendship became my first trips to Austin and eventually my first living situation in Austin, basically this game indirectly caused me to move to Austin and change my entire life.
Very nice.
That's the medium version.
Gotcha.
Fair enough.
The short version just doesn't have that bit about me liking the game.
Yeah. In the same way that Earthbound inspired our entire friendship.
Yeah.
I enjoy that story.
Yeah.
God, I shared that story on Reddit recently because there was a Reddit post about how do you make friends that play JRPGs, and so I talked about how we met, and I've told this. I was playing Earthbound on an emulator on my laptop in the back row of class. The kid next to me leans over and goes, "Is that Earthbound? I love Earthbound." And then we became best friends.
Yes, exactly.
That would be how you'd become best friends back in the day.
Yeah.
That was 20 years ago.
It was 20 years ago.
And I put that on Reddit, and the first response was, "You were in college 20 years ago? You must be so freaking old." And
21, excuse me. 21 years
we
ago
met
now.
in the fall of 2001.
Yes, and it is summer of 2002.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah,
So we are
It's not officially
almost
21.
there.
That's basically the era where if you bonded over Earthbound, then you are best friends.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how it worked. Other people were posting, wait, they had emulators back then? So I'm old.
Just as a aside, didn't Chrono Cross kind of start Jeremy Parish's whole thing? Like that was
it.
I didn't remember if I confused him with someone else.
So he wrote a GameFAQs thing about the demo for it even before the game came out, and it was comedy flavored, and if not outright hilarious,
yeah, right.
it was a comedy flavored thing, and then he expanded that to be like kind of like a whole thing on GameFAQs, and that's how a lot of people found his blog at the time, which kind of almost predated the term blog. I remember him being resistant to the name, but that's how a lot of people found him in that era. Certainly how I found him. So
so like the other two, I also bought the game when it came out, but apparently I'm the only one at the table that thought I was getting Chrono Trigger 2.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I've said,
I mean, you weren't the only one in the world that thought that.
So I've said this many times, and I'm going to try and make this the last time I say this talking about this game. It is a shitty sequel. It is a great game.
Okay.
So when I played it when it came out, I was largely disappointed. I mean, the mechanics and stuff were neat and interesting, but I was largely disappointed that because there are ties between it and Chrono Trigger, just enough to make you go, oh, it is the same. Oh, we're not going to talk about that anymore. Okay, that's that's the guy from. Oh, we're done with that. Okay, all right, thanks. Like, there's just enough to whet your appetite.
I don't know if we're planning on getting into this argument now or later in the review, but I would argue it's less of a sequel and more of an alternative universe, because you're dealing with a game that originally had branching timelines. This is just one of those timelines. That's how I've always taken it.
For the longest time, I thought of it as the two universes, because it had been a while since I played it and I'd forgotten some very specific plot points, but I thought the two universes were the one where they defeated Lavos and the one where they hadn't. And we were just in one tiny corner of that world.
They definitely defeated Lavos because
Yes. But this was when I was younger. That's what I thought it was the difference.
I mean, it incorporates a world where you don't beat Lavos at the end, but...
Yeah.
And you guys did have the years right, 1999 in Japan, 2000 developed.
I want to say it came out,
Square.
if I'm not mistaken, this came out in the United States in the summer of 2000, because that was before I started my senior year of high school, and that's what I played like at the beginning of my senior year, and then I got Final Fantasy IX for Christmas in 2000.
Yeah, that's when I got a job, so that makes sense. That tracks with my experience too.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and move into story and characters.
This is going to be the bulk of the podcast.
Yeah, this is. Let's go through all 45 characters one by one.
There's 270 characters and 370 story. So,
45 characters and 3 are consequential. You're popping your paper.
The Foley you need for this is slamming down a hardcover book.
Yeah, that's true.
I've gotten used to the paper pop sound. When a young man finds himself transported to a parallel world where he died 10 years before, his quest for answers leads him on the adventure of 2 lifetimes.
Oh, that's cute. I like that.
That's cute.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy trying to sum up the entire plot of these JRPGs in a sentence or two.
Yeah. Surge.
It's fun for
The
me.
young
Yes.
man's name is Surge.
I was always disappointed that it's not Sergei.
Yeah. I think I said Sergey.
I think I tried to for a while. I was like, I totally read it as Surge. I was like, okay,
But then I got that his name's Marge, so it's Surge and Marge.
Oh.
And then they call him Sergi. Like, some of the
Sergi
characters
Poo.
call him Sergi or Sergi Poo, which doesn't make sense with, like, Sergei
Sergei Poo.
Sergei or something.
I realized that his name was Surge immediately because I was like, oh, this game deals with the ocean. So the ocean's in there,
yeah.
Surge. That's how they name things.
So many Square games. You had Squall, you had Titus, you had Cloud,
Yeah.
Surge. That's just what they did.
And they all love the image of an anime boy falling through the sky upside down.
Oh man, that was like the biggest innovation of the PlayStation era for sure. Because you never saw that in the Super
Just-
Nintendo.
Right.
I feel like my entire life has been watching anime boys fall upside down through the sky. So before we get into the characters, because there's so many characters, I do want to point out, so the first time I played this game, I overall didn't care for it that much. I played it later as an adult, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I played it for this review, and I landed in the middle, honestly. And one of the biggest reasons for that is the game was pushing a particular agenda really hard. It was pushing real hard the idea that humans are awful and destroying the world.
Do you disagree?
I'm not saying that I disagree with it, but the way the game tries to prove this is the story of the Hydra and the dwarves,
Oh.
right? You have, at one point, Kid, one of your party members, gets poisoned, and you have a story branching option. And the option is either, I'm going to find a cure for this poison, or I don't know what to do. If you choose, I'm going to find a cure for this poison, it leads you on a quest that you're on rails. You can't get around this quest. You have to go to the Hydra Marsh and kill the last remaining Hydra in this world. They were already wiped out in one world. And the environment went to hell, and it's toxic and ruined because the Hydra is what purified the water. But you switch to the other timeline, and there's one Hydra left, although everything is still toxic and awful. And you have to kill the Hydra to get the stuff to kill Kid, or to cure Kid. And there are dwarves that live in the Hydra marshes, and once you kill the Hydra, they can't live there anymore because it's toxic like it was before, but fine.
Well, there's one way around that.
Yeah.
Later, you encounter the dwarves again on a fairy island full of happy fairies and blue water, and it's a good place. And they say, we learned it from you. We learned it from watching you. So they invade and kill all the fairies and take over the island because that's the only way to survive, and we learned it from you. And you're supposed to feel really bad that you have destroyed the environment. The only thing I did was say, I want to help my poison friend. That was the only choice I made. And
Well,
the
you
game
made the wrong choice.
That is, yeah, it's really funny how that's the worst decision you can make in the game. Not only for the characters it gives you as a result, and the characters you miss as a result, but also, I just love that it's the worst decision you can make in the game, and it's totally the if you played a lot of RPGs, or you just know the trope of a hero, you're like, okay, well, we have to do something.
Yeah,
you assume the game would force you.
the game tries
that
to
route.
make you. Honestly, the first time you play through this, you would think, I don't know what to do. Would be okay, but really, you're not going to help them, and then the dialogue option comes up again because a lot of games do that. I refuse to feel like a monster for saying, I want to help my friend who's been poisoned, because that's all I did. From there, the game had me on rails. The only way I could have not destroyed the fairy home by proxy would be to turn off the game and walk away. But the game was trying real hard to make me feel like a monster.
Yeah.
It just bothered
Which
me.
predates Undertale by like 16 years, I think. Something like that.
They also talk about Lavos infecting apes to turn them into humans, and they're part of Lavos, and that's why they're antithetical to the environment, because Lavos has mutated us all to make us hate the planet. And I'm like, I played Chrono Trigger. Ayla and her tribe existed before Lavos, and they were pretty human before Lavos came. They cleared out some trees. They built a settlement like normal human. They were using English. They were humans. Their brains were almost as evolved as the people from the modern era. So again, I don't know what point you're really trying to prove here, but you've been disproved by your own games.
There's a and in fact, there's an ending in Chrono Trigger, one of the 15 or so, where if you beat it at a specific time, you kind of ignore the plight of the 65 million years ago people, and so the reptites take over, and you arrive back in the future, and it's the exact same future, except now everybody's a reptite and humans are rare.
Except for
the
one guy running the race.
The guy running the race, yeah.
In the original game, there's one reptite left in the world.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like one of those things where it's like, well, okay, then Lavos didn't really do anything that wouldn't have been done already.
So that was one of my biggest issues.
Interesting issue. I've never heard that before.
The game was trying real hard to push an
it.
agenda that didn't work, and they were trying to make me feel things that I didn't feel they earned the right to make me feel.
Okay.
It just rubbed me the wrong way. Don't try and tell me I'm a monster and then have nothing to back it up with. But let's talk about characters.
Yes.
Russ.
So let's list all of them and talk about each one individually.
Perfect.
Tell me about the characters. Just pick some of your favorites.
We have to talk about Surge and Kid are the main characters. Surge is the boy who died in one timeline when he was a kid and then survived in the other timeline. So he is the anomaly that is able to swap between the two timelines.
And he's a protagonist that you think is a silent protagonist until he's evil.
Yeah, exactly.
Then he talks a lot. a lot.
And then Link stops talking.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Kid is the main girl, whose name is not really Kid, who is a character from the original Chrono Trigger. So that kind of links it together. And the best thing that you can do in the game is basically ignore Kid and try to kill her at every opportunity.
It's very true. That gets you the best path.
Yeah, just be mean to Kid is kind of the go-to.
The other main character and the earliest one you can get is Poshul.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Love Poshul.
Big fluffy pink dog.
Pink dog.
When I started playing this game, by the way, I had the biggest crush on Kid when I was a kid playing this game. So now as an adult, I'm playing it and going, well, no, it's because I've aged a lot and she hasn't. Now I'm remembering it weirdly now.
Not shocking whatsoever.
It's like,
in her little red skirt and her halter top.
Well, she had that spunky, I'll kick you to the moon attitude.
I get it. I liked Glenn, which is one of the reasons you want to ignore Kid, is you want to get Glenn. If you choose not to save Kid, then Glenn joins you, and Glenn is the best party member in the whole game.
There are multiple times in this game where you were given choices as to what to do, and those choices result in branching paths, and those branching paths result in different recruitable characters. Mm-hmm. There's a total of, 46, 53, something?
I think there's 45. There's 45.
45 recruitable characters. In order to recruit all of them, if you're playing perfectly, you can do it in 3 complete runs of the game.
2.5, technically.
Okay, true.
So, yeah, I think some of my favorites, for listing some of my favorites, I really like Marcy. Marcy is a little girl. Of course, I would like Marcy. Marcy is a little girl who is a high-ranking knight of the Dragoons, and she fights. She has wires that she fights with, and she's good at magic.
Cradle.
Yeah, and she's wearing a little pink dress. I like her.
So, do you pronounce it Acacia Dragoons?
Yeah, Acacia.
Okay, My favorite Acacia Dragoon is Zoa, because he's a giant, mostly naked man with a big iron helmet.
He's a Dragon Quest vendor.
Yeah, and nobody asked him to dress that way.
Right.
There's no one else in the game that looks like that.
Correct.
And he is a member of a military that clearly has a uniform that covers the whole body.
The Devas, they're the 4 Devas, so they get to pick whatever they want to wear. Marcy can wear her pink dress, and he can wear his little yellow shorts and his helmet.
It's not even shorts. It's a skirt with his tidy whities poking out from the front. Trust me, I know this.
Yeah.
There's so many strange characters in this game too.
And they get really weird. I mean, there's a turnip.
There's a turnip. There's a clown skeleton that you assemble by finding his bones.
Yep.
I renamed him Scullivan because I'm a gentleman. Nice. Also, there is Fun Guy, a man who turns into a mushroom right before your eyes.
Yeah. A regular man who eats a mushroom, and now he joins your party as a mushroom man to fight for justice.
Wielding a giant axe.
I mean, there's mermaids.
There's the mermaid. I like the mermaid. There's a little baby dragon, Draggy, that I like.
There's Ayla's mom as a child.
Correct. Leah. Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that she was her mom, but yeah.
There is a brief scene, like, if you play it right, you can get a scene where she says, Ayla sounds like a good name for a kid. That's as much as you get, but the implication is it's Ayla's mom.
Gotcha.
And Pip. We can't forget about Pip, but I feel like we need to talk about Pip in innovations.
Pip the shapeshifter?
Pip is a Pokemon.
I both love and hate the number of characters. The variety is very interesting, but the end result is Starkey, the alien. There's a
literal alien.
Starkey not only is a little alien, but he is a necessary and therefore main character.
Yes. He is part of the plot, the main plot of this game.
But there's a lot of wasted potential because you don't get to learn a lot about the backstory of all these characters, and some of them are really weird and unique. I like Greco. Greco is the example I really want to use here. He is a psychic luchador exorcist.
Right.
Like you do.
And that's it. That's all you know.
Yeah.
Like, you learn that when you recruit him, and you basically learn nothing else about his life, his history. He has no real quests of his own. He has one character scene that deals with a dead friend of his, and that unlocks his ultimate skill. That's it. All the characters get scene of character development.
Get specifically to unlock their final skill.
A psychic luchador exorcist could be the main character of a movie franchise, and we don't get to spend any time learning about him.
We don't get to learn about Matcha either, really.
Nope.
She's Korcha's mom, and she folds up enemies like a shirt. Mm-hmm. She does.
I love Matcha.
She is another reason I never, ever help Kid. Because you don't get her.
You get the better party members all around. You get
her if you get Glenn. And if you go the other way, you get Korcha, and you get a fairy down the line. That's it.
You get now Rasley is a good character, I think.
Rasley's good.
One time, but you get such better characters if you don't help Kid.
Exactly. Those two are for New Game Plus for me.
Yeah.
According to How Long to Beat, the average length of this game is about 40 hours, but there's a lot of fluctuation there, depending on how you play it. The remaster came out. In the original, when you beat the game, you unlock some additional features, the ability to fast forward and slow down time. In the remaster, the game starts with those abilities, plus the ability to turn off random combat, or to basically make yourself untouchable in combat. So depending on what settings you're using, that 40 hours can be 20 hours. It can be 60 hours.
I haven't messed with the invincibility. Is it truly invincibility, or is it...
So how it works, when you activate it, your spell slots are always maxed out, and you literally cannot take damage. Nothing can hurt you.
Yeah, I never mess with those, but...
I ended up messing with it to do some fast replays.
Yeah, the only time that I've ever used one of those functions is in the Final Fantasy VIII remaster when I want to draw a bunch of spells. That's the only time I've used those, like, fast forward.
Is there anything else we want to say in story and characters before we go into this combat system?
I mean, there's too much.
We could go on all
day. Too much to talk about.
Is there a character or two that you wanted to mention?
So my favorite characters to use are mostly the black elemental characters, and that is Skelly. I love Skelly. He is great. Scullivan to you gentlemanly types. I actually don't think there's enough letters to fully spell that out, but that's a name I use.
Mojo and Guile.
Mojo, yes. I like Mojo. Lucky Dan in Japan, as he's known, which, again, Jeremy Parrish has thoroughly covered that ground. He had a whole page about Lucky Dan that I found, I was like, okay. It was like maybe my first example of seeing somebody just being completely extra on the internet. And yeah, Guile is really, really great. Guile, if you prefer. And
who is secretly Magus.
He is implied to be Magus in Radical Dreamers.
Yeah.
However, his history of, and also one of the endings of Chrono Trigger, like for the DS, implies that Magus loses his memories at some point, so he could be. But he's actually more explicitly stated as being Magus in Radical Dreamers, and the Guile that you run into in Chrono Cross is actually different from the Guile in Radical Dreamers. So, it's hairy, but he does act like a Magus would.
I should say, because we've mentioned Radical Dreamers, Chrono Cross is based off of a text adventure in Japan called Radical Dreamers, when they recently did a remaster, and they included for the first time an English version of Radical Dreamers. Nobody at this table has played it yet. We may play it in the future and do a side quest about it.
Yeah.
But that's Radical Dreamers is the original Japanese inspiration for this game.
Yeah, and it's because it uses the same characters in a completely different way than Chrono Cross could be said to be an AU of, like, you know, of Radical Dreamers and Chrono Trigger. And again, because it's a game that deals with time travel, it's, you know, it definitely can have a multiverse, you know, type
This
of
is kind of
overlay.
like the darkest timeline from Chrono Trigger, where all the
little
main
bit, yeah.
characters just died and the Kingdom of Guardia was taken over. And
By Poor, which is
Yeah.
a place that really loves its beef jerky. Like, that's all we know about it in Chrono Trigger.
I just want to say, even though we don't really get to see her, I was always emotionally affected at the ending when you find out that Luca was like Kid's adopted mom and died, because Luca, as you'll know from our Chrono Trigger review many years ago, is one of my favorite characters.
Oh, yeah.
Luca is best
In all
girl.
video games, and I almost cried talking about her personal journey. in
Luca
Chrono
totally
Trigger.
should have been in Smash Brothers, by the way.
Luca and Robo, both of their stories and their relationship is one of my favorite things in Chrono Trigger, if not my favorite thing.
Yeah.
Although my actual preferred party is Chrono, Luca, and Frog, because Frog Flare is just
Frog
OP.
Flare is great. I know.
Yeah.
It's really
Anyway,
Near the end
And
of the game...
anybody, I just have to say, anybody who has Marley hug Chrono at Death Mountain or Death Peak is a monster. Luca is supposed to hug Chrono on Death Peak.
I do want to talk about, near the end of this game, the story goes anime so hard. So hard. There
yeah.
is...
I mean, this plot is basically incomprehensible by the
It's-
end of the game.
I am going to share this sentence. I wrote it down, and you guys came back. It is almost verbatim what the game says. And this sentence made me roll my eyes so hard. Near the end of the game, it reveals, spoilers, I guess, it reveals that one of the main characters is Shala's, from the first game, Shala's daughter clone sent through time to aid a dying young boy while Shala was merged with Lavos outside of reality.
Right.
What?
I mean,
No.
when you're talking about a daughter clone,
What?
when you've got a character like Shala who is super important and yet has zero development or personality, you can do things like that and just be like, well, okay, she's a mystical, omniscient
She's
clone
merged
maker.
with Lavos outside of reality. Here's the cry of one young boy, because
Yeah.
no other young boys ever suffered in the history of the world. And so she created a daughter clone of herself and sent it back through time.
yeah. Well, she heard him because he was in Chronopolis.
So at
Yeah.
no point could she send a daughter clone back in time to go, hey, Guile, here's where I am, by the way. Come
No.
save me.
Well, he didn't get to Chronopolis.
Or
Yeah, he
Magus.
was busy learning parlor tricks.
Yeah.
Making his wand disappear and reappear inside of an
Inside
enemy.
of an-
A very
Yeah, that's
Joker-esque
a-
trick.
That's a fun trick. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the combat system.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're listening at home and you've never played it before, basically throw out any idea you've had about turn-based combat in any
Yeah.
game, because that's essentially what the creators of this game did. Is they said, okay, we're going to be turn-based, but let's start from scratch and think what turn-based could be. There's a stamina system which determines how many actions a character can take in their turn. Each character has 3 physical attacks, a weak, a medium, and a strong, which cost 1, 2, or 3 stamina points. The percentage that you will land a blow goes up with each successful attack. And then you can also cast magic, which uses like 3 stamina points.
Well, it uses however much stamina the level of the spell is
Okay.
with the slot.
Because you can spend yourself into negative stamina,
Correct. So
and
if
then
you
you have
have
to
a-
wait to build it back up.
If you have an element in a level 4 slot, then it will take that much stamina.
So it is
to
very
cost.
easy to spend yourself negative and then take longer to get your turn
And
again.
they're up to 8 levels of stamina.
Russ, do you want to explain the grid and element system?
I mean, I can attempt to.
Go for it.
So rather than using magic in the sense that like Chrono and Marley and Luca and Frog were blessed with it in Chrono Trigger, you use an element grid system. There are 6 elements that sort of correspond to the elements we know. So there's red, blue, yellow, green, white, and black. And red spells are mostly like fire, blue spells are water and ice. And I keep calling them spells, but in the game, it differentiates that they are elements, which is like a paramagic system that anybody can use. Each character has an innate element. So Surge, your main character, his innate element is white. Kid's is red. If they're using elements that correspond to their innate element, they do a little bit more damage with that. They take a little bit more damage from their opposing element. So like white opposes black, yellow opposes green, red opposes blue. There is also the field effect system that takes place in battle. So in the upper left-hand corner of the screen, you have the field effect icon, which is a circle. It's like an oval with 3 different colors inside of it. Those colors correspond to the last 3 elements that were used, and also either power up an element that's being used or power down the opposing element.
And when you get the full field effect, you can use summons of that color.
With the full field effect, you can use a summon. And only characters with the innate element can use summons of that element.
Yeah, and the other thing is that they completely like throw you should have mastered this completely thoroughly because we've given you subtle clues as to how to get the actual ending of this game.
Right.
Locked away behind knowing exactly this stuff, like 100%. Yeah. Enough that you can catch a clue hidden in the background to to know the pattern of something to do.
And even before that, I feel like the game, and this is the experience that I had on my very first playthrough, is I understood the system, but had not mastered it the first time I played this game. And once you get to Miguel is an infamous boss fight.
Yes.
About halfway through the game, he is one of the characters, Lena's father. He is white element. You, at that point in the game, are Lynx, who is black element.
And you're likely using Harley as well, who is also black.
Who's also black element.
And who also ties into the story in a very weird way.
Right. And all of a sudden, they thrust you into this battle with a character with the opposing element and give him just an ungodly powerful attack that can instant kill your black element characters. And so all of a sudden, the game expects you to have mastered this element system in a way that it has not really prepared you for.
And it's worth noting that unlike other RPGs, you can't simply grind your way out of situations because there is no grinding in this game. There are no levels.
So there sort of are levels.
Yeah.
There are star levels rather than character levels.
There are 3 types of level ups in this game. Star levels are when you beat a boss, and the game is usually pretty generous about what's considered a boss.
I was going to say boss in quotes.
Sometimes you'll have 3 boss fights in a row. Sometimes you'll play for 3 hours without a boss fight. But star levels are massive boosts to stats and an increase in your element grid. And apply to every character in the game, whether they're in your party or recruited or not. So, star level
and they're also happening for characters you haven't even recruited yet.
Yes.
Which is the thing that I did not find out until I really, really dug into this game.
So, in between star levels, there are mini boosts and mini levels. I had to really dive deep to learn this stuff, so we're sharing it now. Mini boosts and mini levels are based on the number of fights, no matter how hard the opponent is. So you can grind these out at the opening section of the game, even if you're at the end of the game. Just go back and fight slimes, essentially. Each character gets 1 mini level between star levels, and it happens after... So first you get the mini boosts. 4 to 8 mini boosts.
I love that you're this invested in this. I never would have thought you'd be this
I wanted to learn
on the same level that I am.
I wanted to learn what was going on. So the first 4 to 8 battles after a boss, you will gain a point in a stat. Somewhere in there, you will get your mini level, which is earning 1 to 2 points for 1 to 2 stats. And then after that, fighting random battles get you nothing until the next star level.
Materials and money.
Yeah. But
no
that's what Chris meant by there is no grinding to get better. There is pretty much a hard cap as to how your stats can get boosted.
But that's also kind of a good thing, because that means that the game never throws anything at you that you can't do. But it does require that you use planning and knowledge of your situation and, like, you know, actually have read the tutorials, etc.
Yeah, but I also found it a little frustrating because it meant, you know, as I'm going through this dungeon, apart from getting items and stuff that you can use to craft, I'm not getting anything out of these combats. Like, I'm fighting these random encounters, and my characters aren't getting any stronger for it. I'm putting myself at risk and having to use healing items and all that, and getting nothing in return.
And thank God you can just avoid all of the enemies.
Yeah, which is why it's kind of nice that they give you the, here, just turn off random encounters button in the remake. Mm-hmm.
Well, and in the original, you always can see the enemy.
Yes, you can try and dodge around most of them. They are visible encounters, which I appreciate. Some of them are easier to dodge around than others. But
well, they got to have you doing something in the game.
Now,
Can't just stand around.
At the end of each battle, it gives you the option to use any unused element power that you built up to heal your party.
Yes.
And I think that's a nice touch.
I love that. Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah, because it doesn't cost you anything to do it that way, because there are usable items.
And even the consumable healing items are so cheap.
Yeah.
I never felt like that was a problem.
Exactly.
Usable healing items go into your grid just like your infinite use healing spells.
That was one of the things that I had to figure out the first time I played the game, is how they have all of these different elements that are consumable items. And I remember being in the sand dragon desert place for the first time, and I fell and got a sprain.
Oh, yeah.
And this little icon appears in the lower part of the screen that was a little yellow circle, and it's like sprain. And I'm like, what in the hell is that? I've sprained my ankle. What's happening? And it took me, I had to look it up to figure out that you use a yellow element consumable item.
Each element has its own special injury status.
Like a status effect.
And green is poison, black is blind, or white is blind?
I can't remember.
Black is blind and white is they each have one.
I know yellow is spraying.
Yellow is spraying. Red is burned.
Yes, and freeze.
Yeah, frozen, and then I can't remember what white is for the life of me, but it is something.
Yeah.
Because I was like obsessed with RPGs at the time. Like, I would look in the elemental stores and see all these things, and it'd be like cures sprain, cures poison. And I'm like, none of this has happened to me though. So I had the opposite effect, where the first time it happened to me, I was like, oh, finally, I get to use one of these items.
One other thing that's very interesting, and I think it's in there because they do want you to master this strange system. You can always successfully run away from boss fights.
Yes. Love it.
Never seen that in a JRPG.
Except for one that I'm aware of, Polly. You can't run away from Polly.
I did not know that, but I guess it makes sense.
It's the only one I know of. I think there might be two, but you can't run away from Polly. You can run away, and then Polly will say, what are you doing? And then you'll immediately go back into battle. Giant parrot, by the way, Polly.
Oh, we know Polly.
Yeah.
Oh, this is just going to be... This is a you can pick that up moment for me. So Russ gets to laugh at me for failing to understand a simple concept of the game. It wasn't until the end of the game I realized what I'm about to say isn't true. Your characters always go in the turn order that they are listed in your party.
Right.
So if you wanted to have your characters go in a different order, you needed to rearrange the order that they were standing in your party. Until I got near the end of the game and realized you can actually, when you're selecting what to do, just go left or right and pick somebody else and have them go. Jesus.
Yes. The only thing keeping you from acting in a turn is the stamina.
Yeah.
You can use the characters in any order, no matter where they are in your party.
The game does not tell you that.
It does not tell you that.
And I found out on my own.
Yeah. I like that. That's a good thing. Oh, and talking so much about the element grid, the summoning system. Getting new summons. That is not something that I ever figured out how to do until I played this on the Vita.
Yeah, you got to track them down.
You have to track them down. There are certain there's like
elements.
There's one summon, the Frog Prince, that the game gives you and sort of tells you about the summoning system, and then all the other elements you have to get by getting special elements, a special element called a trap element, and then you have to get into a battle with a particular enemy, and then you have to get the field effect to be fully one color. So you have to get like 3 whites or 3 blacks or whatever.
And then hope that enemy.
And then once you do, then that enemy has a chance of using the element on you, and if you have placed the trap element, then you get the summon rather than the summon happening on you. And then you have the summon and you can use the summon.
Yeah, it's a treasure hunt.
And I did not have a clue that any of that existed the first time I played it. I thought, why did it give me this one blue summon and give me this whole tutorial on summons? And then, like, the blue characters are the only ones that can even use it.
And this is the era where summoning was, like, the most important thing in the world. It's literally, like, the entire plot device of Final Fantasy IX.
Yes.
So it's like...
So weird. And and then when I played it, not this last time I played it because I wanted to just sort of blast through the story, but on the Vita, I think is when I figured that out. And I went out and got all the summons, and my favorite one is Mothership, which is a good one. Black summon that just summons a UFO.
And I knew all this from the first time I beat the game because I just went ahead and beat it with a guide. I was like nuts to this figuring out stuff.
Yep. That guide was a great thing to have.
Yeah. And, you know, unless it was Final Fantasy IX, you could buy a guide and just, like, you know, play through the game like that.
And then if it was Final Fantasy IX, you had to get online.
Go on, play online today.
Mm-hmm. But buy a book to tell you to get on the internet.
Exactly.
So, are we ready to move from combat to innovations? Even though we've covered,
we've covered
all
a lot of
innovations.
Well, yeah.
Usually, innovations is our biggest subject. I think it might be a little lighter this time around, but let's give it a shot. Let's go to innovations.
We've been kind of talking about innovations ever since talking about the experience system. So,
I mean, so much of it is combat. Combat is so different in this game.
And, you know, I think that another innovative thing is the language algorithm.
Mm-hmm.
So your 45 different characters use about 10 different styles of potentially problematic accents and respellings of words, and, you know.
Most commonly seen in... Yeah, it just adds suffix to words a lot of the time.
Mojo seems a little racist in 2022.
Yeah, I was going to say Mojo's maybe... yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm, you know, Greco, speaking of which. Anyways, here's the thing, is that because you had 45 characters and they always would have dialogue if you were in a storyline, because this game actually does acknowledge that characters are in your party, which is actually super rare for RPGs at the time, because that was just so much work.
Or Octopath Traveler.
Yeah. They came up with a kind of, I don't know if algorithm's the right word, but they came up with basically like a program where they would have a stock dialogue that could be translated on the fly depending on which character was in your party and which accent they were using. So every line of dialogue in the game did not have to be rewritten. It could be remade using that program. As far as I know, like, I don't know any other game that has done that.
Yeah.
So that was pretty innovative.
Almost all of your equipment you get via crafting.
Yeah.
You don't usually go to a weapon store and buy, silver sword.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or find it in a chest.
Mm-hmm.
It's from crafting, which you get from the random comments.
And disassembling, which again is another thing that I didn't figure out when I was first playing the game, that you can get. I actually learned this from speed running, that you can get a steel swallow, which is
immediately
Surge's weapon from disassembling the Profiteer purse, that you get as soon as you reach Termina.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can get iron.
Yeah, it definitely makes you look out for things like that. And then there's like, the rainbow weapons and stuff like that also, which is a callback to Chrono Trigger. But you need to do like a whole thing for that. You need to have the best blacksmith in the world working with his alternate universe self, essentially.
Yeah.
Which is pretty great.
I like the characters meeting their alternate universe.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun to be had
fun.
there.
Yeah. And that's what I like about this game, is that is as serious and impenetrable as the overall plot is, The game itself is kind of a romp.
It is. Russ, you wanted to talk about Pip.
Yes, Pip. Pip is a Pokemon. I was going to say Pip is the original Pokemon, but Pokemon came out a little bit before this game.
Yeah.
But Pip is a experiment created by Lucia, who's a scientist.
Not to be confused with Luca,
Yeah,
despite
it's not Luca.
also having purple hair and glasses.
Yeah, and having almost the exact same name. That threw me off as a kid.
Yeah. But she creates Pip, who is this looks like a little white mouse thing, or squirrel, when you first meet him, and he wants to go on a journey around the world. So you let him out of his cage, and then a little bit later he joins you to go on this journey around the world. Pip evolves based on the elements that you use in battle.
Based on the elements that Pip uses in battle.
And everybody else uses.
Really?
Yes, you get more points towards an evolution for if Pip uses an element, but you get some points toward an evolution if your other characters or the enemies use a particular element. It's every element that shows up on that grid.
Pip has 5 forms.
So Pip can evolve into an angel form or a devil form. Essentially, if you use red, yellow, or black elements, he evolves towards a devil form. Always cute. He's always cute, which is what I love about him. He's like a Pokemon that remains cute, even
The difference
when he gets
is
to his final evolution.
I believe the devil form is stronger physically than magically, and the angel form is the opposite.
And if you use red, yellow, or black, he evolves towards devil. If you use white, blue, or green, he evolves towards angel. His initial element is, now I forget, is it red?
I don't remember.
I thought it was white to start, but I could be wrong.
Okay, well,
but it changes as he changes.
yes. So if you use, let's say, like black elements the most leading up to his first evolution, then his element will be black when he evolves into his devil form. If you use yellow the most, it will be yellow, so on. Then, after he evolves once, you can get him to evolve again. And he can evolve into like a super devil form or a super angel form, or then his 5th form is called the Holy Beast. And it's like a middle ground. And it's basically if you have him evolve like to the devil side and then you go back to the angel side, you get a Holy Beast. And the times that he levels, when he actually evolves is when you get new stars. So it's like the amount of elements that he's used towards this evolution in between stars.
And I should say, so stars have one other function. They are the mana for summoning. And it took me a while to figure that out. So every time, say your star power is 20 and you have summons. I don't know if that's even realistic. I think you beat the game at like 35 star power.
But you can hold 99 because it carries over.
Yeah. So say you've got 20 and you've got a summon. So the first time you summon it, the next time you get a star power, it'll say, oh, you have 20 of 21 stars now.
Right.
And for a while I was like, what happened? That number is getting out of sync. It's getting further out of sync. This is literally the only reason I would ever use an inn, because that's what restores that star power, is sleeping at an inn.
Yep.
I mean, considering you get the star from beating up like Salt and Pepper anyway. That's
why didn't we mention them in characters? Oh, they're so good.
Oh, they are very funny.
They're basically the tutorial enemies.
Ketchup, if you take the worst path.
Yes.
The easiest / worst path to the castle.
Yeah, Salt and Pepper are great.
They are the comic relief villains that keep recurring.
Low-ranking Acacia Dragoons.
And their job is to teach you how the element system works.
Through failure and more failure.
They're a lot of fun. I don't know why you can't just ultimately recruit one of them. Do we have anything else under innovations that we want to talk about? No? I see a bunch of people shaking their heads.
No.
So let's talk about music.
Well, Chrono Cross has never been known as a big deal in music, so we could just
nothing to talk about there.
Let's glaze over this.
Yeah, no.
No. Okay, so Chrono Cross is considered by most video game music likers as the best, if not just, top 5, top 10, whatever, soundtracks of all time. The intro music to the beginning cinematic, which goes real hard, by the way, and especially with spoilers. I recommend people who don't like spoilers not to watch the intro movie. But anyways, we didn't care about that stuff back
No,
in
not
2000. But yeah, the song is called Time's Scar. We sometimes call it Tim's Car.
Nice.
And and it frequently sails to the number one place on people's best music of all time. So the soundtrack, it features the return of Yasunori Mitsuda, who created the music to Chrono Trigger, which I believe was one of his first gigs. In fact, he was kind of coming in to fill out the rest of the stuff that they couldn't get Nobuo Uematsu to finish, because this is Chrono Trigger was a marvelous jam of the Dragon Quest people and the Final Fantasy people, though the story that everybody praises so much is 80% Yuji Horii, who is the Dragon Quest guy, but I'm getting away from this. Yasunori Mitsuda basically came in, completely rocked it, almost destroyed his health in the process, apparently, because he is a classic overworker. And that shows in Chrono Trigger and Chrono Cross. Yeah. So Chrono Cross opens strong with just this tantalizing, classical guitar and violins and just hand drum beats and things like that. It's very kind of world music-y, a little bit Celtic, a little bit everything, but it just kind of becomes its own thing. And it just, for the rest of the game, just does not let up on just beautiful, lush, melodies and things like that. And just the instrumentation is so perfect. When you go outside for the first time, the town theme is great. That's kind of the first thing you hear. But then you go out to the outside world, and it's just this really nice steel drum kind of tropical arrangement of the Chrono Trigger theme. So it's the same melody that you recognize, but done up to inform you, hey, we're on a really beautiful island. And
love it.
Yeah, and in the 1.5 seconds that it takes you to walk to the first dungeon, quote unquote, the beach, you get to hear the lizard dance, which is just this awesome little, starts off with just one little ding, 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 ding. I try to make it a point not to try and sing the melodies, but it starts with just one little dingy string instrument, and then just this whole funk groove comes in, but it's still using these acoustic kind of world instruments. And then you get into Alternate Universe, which has another world theme, which completely flips the scene around to being this melancholy, cello-driven kind of tune, and it's just beautiful. And I always would just leave this map on for ever.
Mine was the opposite one. I liked the homeworld.
They're both, they're both excellent. The only thing is that the regular battle music theme, of which you will hear a lot, starts off with the busiest noise of notes that I associate it with the battle theme and getting into another battle and stuff, but it's such a not you expect in a JRPG for the themes to be rock, but it's really not. It's just this kind of fluty mess of stuff that eventually becomes more of a song, but it's the first part of the battle theme will irritate you. Fortunately, it's got one of the best boss themes of all time, so that's perfectly acceptable. But yeah, just anywhere that there's new music, when you finally do get to Termina and it's this Celtic bouncy thing with accordions and
I can hear it in my head right now. Actually.
It's just every track in this game, you just get so excited to hear a new track. Even normally, I don't like the dank dungeon theme. That is to say, something that's slow and plotty and kind of sinister. But this one has such it. When you go to the one island that's made of bones and stuff, and it's also one of the Hydra Marsh themes. But it's the one that starts off with just this boom, just this huge bass note that just comes in, and then it starts doing the hand drums and stuff to it. Even that, you're just oh yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, it's an extremely exciting soundtrack, and it rightfully sits at the top of a lot of people's lists, including mine. I would actually even say it's an improvement over Chrono Trigger, and that's I know that seems like kind of a hot take, but when you're just talking about the music of Chrono Cross, that's almost the safest thing to say about it when comparing it to the other game. So there you go.
Yeah.
What?
Can I have my research back on them? There was one interesting thing I saw about the composer that I wanted to share.
Oh, sure.
I do the minimal audio or music research, and then Chris usually doesn't need it because
I didn't look at that paper.
Nope. But what I found interesting about the composer is he claims to just compose music by just fooling around on the keyboard and letting melodies come to him, and sometimes he comes up with the songs in his sleep, like the ending theme to Chrono Trigger.
Here's a little secret, though, about writing music. That's how most of everyone does it. I'm just fiddling around with something. Oh, I like that. And then, you write that down, and that's music.
Well, he did a good job.
He did. His Dreams did a great job of writing the ending to Chrono Trigger.
Yeah. Like I said, this is the game that made me recognize music. My video game music trajectory was Luffy and the Fortress of Doom, the intro, as you're getting the backstory on Doom Island. Then Chrono Trigger getting to Zeal. It was the Zeal theme that captured me. Then
everything about Zeal captured my
imagination.
In
Chrono Cross, I started up the game, left Arnie Village for the first time, and then just sat there and listened to the music on the homeworld map. And that's when it clicked in my head, like, oh, game music is like a real thing, like a real art form.
This is a melody I recognize, and it's being presented in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we've run a little longer than normal because there's just a lot to talk about in this game.
Well, it's a great game.
So let's go ahead and move on to our final thoughts. Yeah.
My final thought should be obvious. One of my I would say this is actually my second favorite game of all time. Earthbound is 1, this is 2. Earthbound is 1 because it inspired a friendship as well as being a great game. Chrono Cross is 2 because it inspired an appreciation of video game music as well as just being an amazing game. So I would give this, 5 Shalas trapped in a time void out of 5.
Nice. 5 alternate universe Shalas. Yeah, I similarly, I'm always been an outspoken proponent of this game, especially to people who were disappointed by it in its proximity to Chrono Trigger. I say, that haven't had enough time to replay the game and kind of read about it and kind of think about it. I'm like, I actually even like the way this game ties in Chrono Trigger, and that's, again, that may seem like hot take territory, but I truly love what this game went for, and there's only 2 major criticisms that keep it out of my, I'd say it's probably in my top 10 favorite JRPGs, but it's not in my top 10 favorite games, and there's 2 reasons. One is that you change protagonists due to a very convoluted plot point, and you then spend about, I measured this, it's 25 to 30% of the rest of the game as this other character that you don't care about. And the amount of stuff that you have to do while not being able to be yourself was always irritating to me.
It was kind of neat that transition happened at the disc swap.
Yes.
For me, because you can't get this on the modern remake, obviously, but the original game came on 2 discs, and that big dramatic character swap was the disc swap point, which to me made it feel even bigger.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it's like, well, now you have to go to speak with all 6 dragons that you can speak to, and you got to do this and that and these side quests and this side quest and recruit 10 more characters, all as this other character. And it's just I was like, man, they could have just had me swap, do a couple of dramatic points, and then save the 6 dragons for when I turned back, and But anyways, it messed with the pacing for me in a major way, and that's again personal. But
as a rebuttal, I've heard that it has inspired a lot of furries.
Well, okay, that's good then.
Yeah. So,
and we are going to talk about Breath of Fire at some point, so that's we could talk plenty about where furries come from. But yeah, and
love to the furry community.
Yeah, and it's not even that the character is bad. That's the idea, but it's it's also that it's a black elemental character, and then that's also the only time in the game you get to use Harley, who's one of my favorite characters, who is also black elemental. So it really messes with your vibe unless you're really into black elemental, which, by the way, I always just throw in another black elemental character and just
they are my favorite metal band, Black Elemental.
The Black Elemental.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And then you fight Miguel.
The second is the final boss, and the mechanic that they throw in at you at the last second with no warning, and how you have to like get it right. I got it right because I used a guide, but I would be so resentful of that move if I didn't use a guide to get through it. And I'm like, I think this is just here to sell guides. Or or whatever, because like there's no possible way
it is frustrating
was supposed to intuit this.
It doesn't make you do anything like that
ever
before the end of the game.
Playing through it this time, I knew it was coming, and I was able to see the hints as to how to, like, I got how you were supposed to be able to do this without a guide, only because I had done it before with one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The only other thing I can think of is because it's more obvious when you actually do play through the game, I think it was meant to be a new game plus, oh, here's the actual good ending. But it's like, if you got that other ending and then you're like, I'm going to play through the entire game again, like, I don't know that would happen. But
so for me, it's a really great game. I've mentioned a couple of the pain points I had where I thought the plot got a little preachy or way too anime. Overall, I give it an A-. It's still a great game. They tried a lot of new things, most of which worked, and I appreciate that. I appreciate it when a game tries new stuff instead of just going with the formulas. And I especially appreciate it when the new stuff works. I do still think Chrono Trigger's the better game. So
you're with the majority. You were entitled to your opinion.
No, but it is a great game and a good time. Russ, if they want to play Chrono Cross,
well, the best way to probably play it at this point is to get the Radical Dreamers edition on your PS5 or PS4 or Switch or PC or maybe on an Xbox. I don't know about that.
Yeah, Radical Dreamers edition is great. By the way, the soundtrack for that one was kind of remade, but in that way that unless you're real familiar with it, you probably won't even be able to tell.
So for plugs, I want to plug a TV show called Our Flag Means Death.
I've heard of this show.
If the idea of a comedy about a gay pirate ship appeals to you, this is the show for you.
Okay. You really like pirates. Last episode, you talked about a woman dressing up as a pirate. Now you're talking about gay pirates.
Our Flag Means Death stars Taika Waititi as gay leather daddy Blackbeard.
Okay.
And he's literally wearing the costume from Mad Max Road Warrior, which is hysterical to me. It is not... It has historical figures, but it is not worried about historical accuracy. And it really is... Let's be gay, do crimes. That's what it is. That's the show. It's a lot of fun. By the time you hear this, season 2 is probably out. I watched it, and it's just a damn good time.
Which the other main character is Rhys Darby, who, if you've watched Flight of the Conchords back in the day, was their manager Murray.
I love Rhys Darby.
Yeah, he's the other main
character. He was
character.
also Corin, I believe was his name, in the Voltron animated series. Oh. He's hilarious.
Yeah, he's
Russ,
great.
what do you have to recommend?
This time, I'm recommending, as I've told you, I've been on a sort of visual novel adventure game sort of kick right now. I've recently completed a game on my Switch called AI the Somnium Files, which
I heard that one's good.
Chris is firing up his Switch to go shop for it right now.
AI Somnium Files is very good. It is by, I'm going to Google his name as I tell you this. It is by the same guy who did the Zero Escape series on the DS and 3DS and Vita. It is Kotaro Uchikoshi, and the games, it is a visual novel adventure game with puzzles mixed in, and it explores a lot of like pseudoscience concepts and like mythology and folklore, and the characters are really over the top. The characters are very extra. They're very over the top.
We taught my mother that term this weekend.
Yes.
She's very excited about it.
Excellent.
So they're all very extra. They're all very out there. It has a good sense of humor on top of being just an interesting murder mystery to solve. And because all of the games, it's not a spoiler to say, all of the games are kind of about parallel timelines, parallel worlds. I've always liked that concept, and it's interesting exploring what happens in this murder mystery in parallel worlds.
Chris?
I'm going to shout out a game that came out pretty recently that I think a lot of people are going to overlook because it might not be in the RPG likers wheelhouse. But it's called Wreckfest, and it is a demolition derby game that's available on Switch and I think Steam and probably PlayStation 4 or whatever, but I actually don't remember if it's on PlayStation yet. But it is a demolition derby game that is completely bazonkers. You one of your first missions is to do a 15 against 1 demolition derby where everybody's riding lawnmowers. And you can create like all these custom like games and such where you can put everybody else on a lawnmower, but you get to drive a combine harvester. It has this slew of cars that are like close to name brand cars, but none of them are name brand. And they when you buy them, they're a wreck, and you can like kind of work on them and stuff, like earning money, and you earn money through doing, again, demolition derbies and special challenges. And it has weird unlockables such as literally driving a couch with a steering wheel. Nice. So it's kind of like recreating the look of how you're looking while playing this game in your living room. You can literally put yourself into a race driving a couch. And I love this game. I put a lot of hours into it so far, and it's been very, very fun.
Very nice.
All right. Well, that's it for this time, guys. Join us next time. We're going to take a look back at the last 9 games that we played, talk about some tropes, some likes, some dislikes. You know the game. We've done this very special episode a number of times now. We'll see you then.
We will see you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Home on the RNG is a presentation of Mad Centaur Productions. You can find Jeff on YouTube at youtube.com/Centaur Productions or on Twitter at Jeff Centaur. You can find Russ on Twitter at RussMac25. You can find Chris on Twitch at twitch.tv/LiarExaggerate or on Twitter at EnrichFlavor. Thank you for listening, and remember to save your game before powering off this podcast.